Welcome to the Cinema Gold Show. I'm your host, Larry Leese. On today's episode, we're going to take a look at the latest box office numbers from this weekend, as well as give our thoughts on Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey, as well as Knock at the Cabin. But first, we'd like to thank our sponsor, Audible, for sponsoring this episode. If you're a fan of audiobooks and looking to get your hands on the next popular audiobook, check out Audible today. Go to audibletrial.com/Larry21 and get a free 3-month trial and free audiobook of your choice. And as always, thank you so much for watching and listening. And now on to our main topic. It must be hard being Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. Reviews weren't great, which is fine. So apparently Disney and Marvel Studios were super happy about letting a famous anti-vaccine advocate do as much press as she wants, which really sucks. But along with that stuff, the movie can't even really enjoy opening at number 1 on the domestic box office charts because Avatar: The Way of Water is still the biggest story, thanks to the fact that it has now surpassed James Cameron's own Titanic to claim the number 3 spot on the all-time international box office charts. It has some work to do to catch Avengers Endgame. Cameron is now in spitting distance of locking out the top 2 spots. But we're here to talk about the domestic charts. So now we have to briefly acknowledge Ant-Man. It opened to 104 million, so that's good. Vaccines are also good. Not dying from COVID is good. Wearing a mask and getting vaccinated to protect other people as much as yourself is good. As for Avatar: The Way of the Water, it threw $6 million onto its domestic money pile. That's only a 15% drop from last week, which is stunning for a movie that has been out for 10 weeks now. So maybe it'll just never stop making money. It'll easily break all of those records if that's what happens. Under those is last week's winner, Magic Mike's Last Dance. Yeah, $5.4 million this week, with a $17 million total. Followed by Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, $5.2 million and $166 million after 9 weeks. Finishing at the top 5 is Knock at the Cabin, which bounced up position with $3.9 million and $30 million in its 3rd week. The only other newcomer on the charts is Liam Neeson's Marlowe, which opened at $1.9 million in 8th place. The limited release of fun with the public domain horror movie, Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey, opened in 12th with a little more than $680,000. So in summary, for the full top 10, Ant-Man at number 1, Avatar: The Way of the Water, followed by Magic Mike's Last Dance. Next up, Puss in Boots: The Last Wish. Number 5 is Knock at the Cabin. Number 6 is 80 for Brady. Number 7 is Titanic. Number 8 is Marlowe. 9 is Missing. And 10 is A Man Called Otto. Let us know your thoughts on this week's box office numbers. Were you surprised at the results? Is there one movie that you think is doing better than the rest? Doing better than should be expected? Let us know. And now on to today's first review of Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey. Winnie the Pooh is a beloved children's character that has been a part of pop culture for nearly a century. The character first appeared in a series of books published in the 1920s and has since been adapted into numerous movies, TV shows, and other forms of media. However, in recent years, there has been a trend of reimagining classic characters in more adult and gruesome ways. This is precisely what writer-director Rhys Frake Waterfield has done with Winnie the Pooh in his new movie, Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey. In the film, the director recast Pooh as a cannibalistic killer whose fondness for honey has been replaced by a taste for blood. The movie takes place in the 100-acre wood and follows a group of university students who stumble upon Pooh and his friends, only to be gruesomely killed off one by one. This reimagining of Pooh has caused a great deal of controversy, with some arguing that it is disrespectful and inappropriate take on a beloved children's character. However, others have praised Frake Waterfield for his creativity and willingness to push boundaries. So, we're going to explore the world of Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey in greater depth, taking a look at its themes, characters, and production. We're also going to dive a little bit into the controversy surrounding the film and explore the reasons why some people find it offensive. We'll also examine the broader trend of reimagining classic characters in more adult ways and consider the implications of this trend for pop culture as a whole. At its core, Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey is a horror movie. However, like many horror movies, it also has underlying themes and messages. One of the most prominent themes of the movie is the loss of innocence. Throughout the film, they portray Pooh and his friends as twisted and corrupted versions of their former selves. In the prologue, we learn that Pooh and his friends have renounced their humanity and the ability to speak after Christopher Robin abandoned them. The decision is born out of desperation and a desire to survive in the harsh world of the 100-acre woods. However, this decision also represents a loss of innocence. Pooh and his friends were once innocent and carefree creatures. Their experiences in the 100-acre woods have transformed them into something darker and more dangerous. The fact that they are now killers is a clear sign of their corrupted nature. The loss of innocence is a common theme in horror movies, and Blood and Honey is no exception. Another theme that runs throughout the movie is the idea of friendship and loyalty. Despite the fact that Pooh and his friends have become killers, they still have a sense of loyalty to each other. This loyalty is demonstrated in the way they work together to hunt down and kill the university students. Although their actions are monstrous, there is a sense of camaraderie and friendship between the characters that is both disturbing and compelling. The characters in Blood and Honey are all based on the original characters. However, in the movie, they've been transformed into something much, much darker and more violent. Pooh, in particular, is a very different character than the one that children have come to know and love. Instead of being a lovable and innocent bear with a fondness for honey, he's now a bloodthirsty killer who preys on unsuspecting victims. Piglet is also a very different character in the movie. Instead of being a timid and nervous pig, he's now a brutal killer who is just as ruthless as Pooh. In fact, Piglet is almost scarier than Pooh because he's so small and seemingly innocent. The other characters, such as Tigger, Eeyore, and Rabbit, are also present in the movie, but they play much smaller roles than Pooh and Piglet. One of the most interesting things about the characters in Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey is the way in which they are portrayed. Drake Waterfield has taken characters that are beloved by children and turned them into monsters. This is a bold move and one that has been met with both praise and criticism. Some people have argued that it's disrespectful to take such innocent characters and turn them into killers. However, others have argued that it's a creative and original take on the characters that it's both disturbing and compelling. Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey was produced on a low budget, and watching this movie you can tell, but despite this, the movie is visually impressive. Drake Waterfield has used visual conventions to create a foreboding atmosphere that is both intense and schlocky. The movie takes place in the 100-acre woods, which has been transformed into a dark and eerie setting. Cinematography is excellent, and the use of lighting and shadows creates a sense of unease that is palpable throughout the movie. One of the most impressive things about the production of Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey is the use of masks. Pooh and Piglet are both played by actors wearing masks, and this adds to the sense of unease and dread that permeates the movie. Masks have been used in horror movies for decades, and Drake Waterfield has used them effectively in this film. So now let's get into the controversy, shall we? As we mentioned earlier, Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey has been the subject of controversy since its release. Some people argue that the movie is disrespectful to the original characters, and that it is inappropriate to turn such innocent characters into killers. Others, like we said, believe it's a creative and original take on the characters, making it both disturbing and compelling. There are also concerns that the movie is too violent and graphic for children. Although, after watching this movie, I can tell you it's not intended for children, nor is it even, promoted towards children. Some parents may be concerned about the effect that the movie could have on young viewers. However, it is important to note that the movie is rated R, which means that it's not suitable for children. Another concern that has been raised is the impact that the movie could have on the brand of Winnie the Pooh. The character is a beloved icon, and some people worry that the movie could damage the reputation of the character. However, it's unlikely that this movie will have a significant impact on the brand, as it's intended for a very specific audience. Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey is just one example of a broader trend of reimagining classic characters in more adult and gruesome ways. This trend is not new, and there's been many examples of it in the past. For example, there have been numerous movies that have reimagined fairy tales in more violent and disturbing ways. Similarly, there's been many TV shows and movies that have reimagined superheroes as darker and more complex characters. There are many reasons why writers and directors are drawn to this trend of reimagining classic characters. One is that it allows them to explore the characters in new and interesting ways by taking characters that are familiar to audiences and turning them into something darker and more complex. Writers and directors can create new stories that are both familiar and fresh. And another reason why this trend is so popular is that it allows writers and directors to push boundaries and explore themes that might not be possible in more traditional stories. Horror movies in particular are well suited to this type of reimagining, as they allow writers and directors to explore themes of violence, loss of innocence, and corruption in a way that would not be possible in a more traditional story. However, there are also risks associated with this trend of reimagining classic characters. One of the biggest risks is that it can be seen as disrespectful to the original characters and their creators. The characters that are beloved by audiences are transformed into something darker and more violent. It can be seen as a betrayal of the original vision of the character. This can lead to backlash and criticism from fans of the original character. Another risk is that it can be seen as a lazy way of creating new content. Instead of coming up with new characters and stories, writers and directors are taking existing characters and simply just transforming them into something darker and more violent. This can be seen as a lack of creativity and originality and can lead to criticism from audiences. So before we move on, let us know your thoughts in the comment section below. Have you seen this movie? If you have, what did you think of it? And would you want to see more of these, beloved characters be turned into horror movies? What would be your next pick for a new horror movie based on these characters? I think for me, I could see I'd probably go Alice in Wonderland, because if you read the original books, the original story, it is very dark. So they can go with that and do a really dark Alice in Wonderland. And now on to our next review of Knock at the Cabin. M. Night Shyamalan's Knock at the Cabin feels out of alignment with the filmmaker's catalog of twist-heavy, suspense-laden thrillers. Maybe that's because this time he has collaborated with two co-writers, Steve Desmond and Michael Sherman, while adapting the devastating novel The Cabin at the End of the World. It's an apocalypse film that doesn't feel all that apocalyptic, and overall one-note, and sometimes muted doomsday scenario. The chamber-lock standoff between a cult-like group and a fearful family is occasionally effective, but rarely affecting, which doesn't match the bleak tragedy at the heart of Tremblay's story. Everyone is playing their individual parts well enough as a whole, between the same-sex parents Eric, by Jonathan Groff, and Andrew Van Aldridge, their sweetheart of an adopted daughter Wen, and devout captors led by Leonard, played by Dave Bautista. The standoff takes place in a rental cabin where Eric and Andrew have whisked Wen away for some vacation cheerfulness, only to be interrupted by Leonard's crew and informed they have a choice. Choose one family member to die, and in doing so, save the world. Bautista ends up being the standout as his hulking conversationalist busting out of his pedestrian button-down shirt, capable of destructive violence and yet softly rationalizing through dialogue with the charismatic command of a cult leader. The stalemate tension hinges on Eric and Andrew's disbelief in divine visions, along with M. Night's ability to maintain suspense over Leonard's insistence that our world will burn, no sacrifices chosen. But only Bautista's performance is innocent, despite both mentioned elements being guilty of lackluster results. The even temperament of Knock at the Cabin is shocking, given how M. Night unleashes a brutal heartbreak, remorseless bigotry, plague smiting, and other radically intense experiences. Groff and Aldridge barter for their lives and relationship bliss, yet their romantic chemistry burns no higher than a matchstick's flame. Leonard's sidekick invaders, including Rupert Grint's Bostonian ex-con Redmond, and Nikki Amuka Bird's apologetic nurse Sabrina, never establish enough backstory to give weight to their sob stories when trying to sway the restrained couple towards a decision. Even when Knock at the Cabin deals with complex emotional predicaments and it escalates them on screen, they tend to play shallow and hollow. M. Night's proven himself a fearlessly risk-taking storyteller throughout his career. At this time, he churns through faded motions that should be present as more momentous. Knock at the Cabin is the plain white bread of home invasion thrillers, structurally dependable while lacking flavor. There's never any instance where the horrors of facing 4 weapon-wielding strangers draw even an ounce of fear, even with the 4 horsemen of apocalypse symbolism made evident by overt religious overtones. Partly because that's not Leonard's intention, so he states. Eric and Andrew's flashbacks, where their queerness is rejected by everyone, from loved ones to anonymous bar patrons, don't feel as authentically upset cut between the couple's tight imprisonment, because there's a tendency to rush these otherwise important character moments. Leonard, Redmond, Sabrina, and nurturing line cook Ardiane state their cases as proponents of humankind's survival, but their words hit no harder than down pillows. There's an intriguing concept at stake. Sacrifice personal happiness in order to save a world full of monsters. Yet Knock at the Cabin doesn't convincingly or compellingly sell its chosen finale. There are other competencies outside Batista's breaking of typecast chains that shouldn't go unnoticed. Child performances aren't always reliable, but this time, Gwen is a darling addition to scenes because she brings out Batista's warm compassion or emboldens Groff and Aldridge as partners. Cinematographers Sharon Blasch and Lowell A. Meyer receptively use their cameras to emphasize the cabin's isolation, sustaining dramatic pauses as the frame looms steady, heightening uneasiness while we eagerly await for some conflict to erupt. M. Night is no stranger to psychological mind games and dangerous dilemmas, which allow scenes to move smoothly on a functional level from the very minute Batista's harbinger appears in the woods. But little is built upon that. This cabin's got solid bones. It is disappointingly barren on the inside. Knock at the Cabin fails to knock the classic cabin in the woods horror methods out of the park. M. Night abides by unfittingly formulaic standards and produces a tonal flatliner despite an arsenal of emotionally targeted beatdowns and prophecy-spouting lambs led to slaughter in the name of blind faith. There's nothing uniquely surprising or exceptionally rousing, which is a shame given the unfathomably dreadful predicament and an interesting turn of a performance from Dave Bautista. It's a film without sensation that feels like it's pulling its punches across the board. Development is stunted, ideas lack passion. The camera avoids visible violence before the ending strolls off into the sunset with barely any goodbye. Thematic messages tethered to Old Testament interpretations are lost when the story wraps due to an increasingly stale predictability. As Knock as the Cabin exposes an M. Night script with surprisingly little to say. So, we're going to give this a 5 out of 10. Let us know your thoughts on Knock at the Cabin in the comments section below. And before we go, give us a thumbs up if you like our video, subscribe to the channel, and hit that bell notification button to be notified when we release new episodes. As always, you can find us on Good Pods, subscribe there, or on all major podcast platforms. And of course, if you want to support the channel, you can buy us a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/cinemagold. As always, thank you so much for watching and listening. We will see you next time.